you can hear my voice. You're connected to audio, which is fantastic. And I am just making sure that I am recording this. Yes, I am. And I do apologize. So my camera is here, but all the faces are over here. So I'm looking at you when I'm talking to you. It just doesn't look like I am from your viewpoint. But Angela, do you want to go ahead and kind of kick us off for the morning, or?
Sure. Yeah, I can do that. So, most of you are aware of who I am, Angela Gerberding. I'm overseeing the IBT grant. I do want to introduce Emma Godwin. She is with us this morning. She's been having a few video issues, so she may leave her camera off, but she is with us. When she gets a chance, I'm sure she'll turn her camera back on and we'll be able to see her lovely face. But she is with us. I sent an email previously introducing her to the group. You're not losing me, you're just gaining an Emma. So I'm not going anywhere. You can reach out to either or both of us. But she's still counting days on the job. So if you email her only, she's probably going to be like, "Hey, Angela, what's the answer to this question?" So you're probably at this point best emailing both of us. But she and I are talking daily about all kinds of things IBT related. So welcome to Emma and everyone. Today is a professional development topic. I think the topic we originally had listed was like labor laws, something along those lines. The brilliant presenter that we had in mind to do this when we laid out topics left that particular job and we weren't able to get her to come on today. So, of course, in true education form, you do a quick pivot. And Brittany is going to be talking about supporting underserved populations, which is all things IBT grant. That's a lot of what this grant does, is working with underserved populations in a variety of ways. So I'm going to turn this over to Brittany. I probably will turn my camera off because I've also been notified that I have unstable video connection, but I'm still here. So.
All right, perfect. Well, I'm going to try and leave my
Brittany.
camera on. If I do get the alert that my connection is unstable, I will turn it off. And also, I do apologize. Like I said, my camera is here, but everything else, I'm going to try and monitor the chat, and everything else is over here. And hopefully Angela will kind of help me monitor the chat as well. So as Angela said, we are going to talk about resources for supporting underserved populations. As I move through the slide deck, you will see that it is very text heavy. I do apologize for that. I'm not going to sit here and read off every slide to you all, but I am the type of learner that when I get a slide deck, I really want it to be a resource. I really want to be able to look back at it and have all of the information and the knowledge gained right there. And so that was the intention behind this. I will move through the slides rather quickly because I really want to focus on sharing some of the resources that our center has developed and has available to you, as well as allowing time for you all to ask questions and also share your own experiences from your programs with supporting underserved populations, what's worked well, what you have tried and maybe hasn't worked so well, where you're currently sitting with that. And so I'm getting a little ahead of myself, which you will see that I do often. But so what is ICSPS? So ICSPS is the Illinois Center for Specialized Professional Support. So my face and my voice may be familiar to you all, either from working in other avenues of ICCB land, but I'm also the one who, for IBT, when it comes to the professional development webinars, as well as operational meetings, I tend to be the one behind the scenes, helping with any technical assistance needs, monitoring the chat, all of that on Zoom. But our center as a whole is housed at Illinois State University, and we really focus on professional development, technical assistance, and program improvement strategies for career, technical, and adult education, as well as workforce professionals. So we kind of cover both caveats when it comes to this wonderful world of education and work-based learning and workforce integration. And we really focus on the achievement of special and targeted population learners, So the title of this slide deck is Supporting Underserved Populations. But when you talk about career and technical education, they are guided by Perkins 5. And within Perkins 5, they refer to these populations as special populations. Or if you all are familiar and work with your WIOA partners, they refer to them as targeted populations. We are all talking about the same individuals. We're all talking about the same students or clients, depending on what side of the fence you land on, that need that extra scaffolding, that need that extra support in order to find their success. And we are really focused on research-based practices and offering customized professional development, whether that's through webinars, events, resources, things along those lines. So that is who ICSPS is, and that's the team that I work for. And so today, like I said, I'm gonna do an overview of these underserved populations. This specific group that I'm going to be discussing is really guided by Perkins 5 and career and technical education. However, whether we're talking about special populations, whether we're talking about targeted populations, depending on, which partner we're discussing, like I said, they are all students that you all are already providing programs to, you're already supporting. So regardless of the program they are in, these populations are the same across the board. And then each population will have a summary of support strategies. And then I really want to open it up to questions and comments, as well as sharing the additional resources we have, because when it comes to underserved or special populations learners, this is a group that our center really focuses on. And so we've got what we call super strategy documents that we utilize and provided for programs. We also have a plethora of recorded webinars, both on the academic as well as the workforce side. So that's really where I want to spend the meat of our time, but we're going to move through kind of, who are these populations of students that we're talking about? So when I talk about special populations, like I said, that's really coming out of Perkins 5, which is the federal regulations that guide career and technical education. And so we are talking about individuals with disabilities, economically disadvantaged, non-traditional fields, which when we talk about non-traditional fields, we'll kind of explain more what that means. English learners, those who are experiencing homelessness, youth that have been involved in foster care, military-connected youth, single parents parenting teens and pregnant mothers, as well as out-of-workforce individuals. And before we get too far into it, I do want to say that none of these are pigeonholed, if that's the correct term, probably not, but you can have someone who is an individual with a disability that is also entering into a non-traditional field, or you could have an individual who is an English language learner that is experiencing homelessness. What you won't see on here is specific conversation about race, ethnicity, gender identity, the LGBTQIA plus community, but I do want to talk about those individuals as well, but that'll be more when we open it up for discussion and conversation from you all. So these are the populations that I'm going to give a brief overview of and then go through some support strategies for. Also, I am a very informal presenter, so please feel free if you have a working microphone and you have a question or a comment or a best practice that you found that has been helpful, feel free to come off mute. I will not be offended at the interruption. I gladly will want to hear from you all and your comments and questions throughout this presentation. Okay, so when we are talking about students with disabilities, we are talking about both physical and mental impairments. Now, these also can be what are referred to as invisible disabilities. And so those students who either have a diagnosis and a record of having quote unquote an impairment, or those whose whether it's anxiety or ADHD that can cause disruption within their academic learning process. And like I said, these slides are very text heavy. I'm not going to read everything to you, but I really wanted this to be a full resource once you get the slide deck. So what are some ways we can support students with disabilities within our educational programs? We want to make sure that everyone is aware, and again, I know I'm talking to some experts on here as well. You all are working with all of these populations of students on a daily basis. So please feel free to provide any expertise that you may have in the chat, come off mute. I definitely want this to be a conversation. But when you're talking about students with disabilities, you know, whether it's autism or, like I said, anxiety or a physical disability, there are a wide array of diagnoses, both under, like, let's take autism, for example. That is a very umbrella diagnosis, and there are various symptoms and various other comorbidity diagnoses that can take place as well. And so it's really about understanding the individual student and the individual barriers that they face with their disability. We have an autism grant that we support with the Illinois State Board of Education. And I hear so many individuals say that if you've met one person with autism, you've met one person with autism. And I think that goes across the board when you're talking about students with disabilities, is that when you've met someone with a disability, you've just met that one individual with a disability, because it can impact the individual's lives in different ways than it would, you know, you can't check a box and fit certain characteristics based off of an individual's disability. Everyone encounters it differently. Universal design for learning is something that we also encourage as well. And I won't go too deep into it. If you're familiar with universal design for learning, that's fantastic. I'll also share some of our resources on that as well. But UDL really focuses on meeting the learner where they are and adjusting our curriculum and our teaching styles to meet their learning styles, and offering various modules and outputs and ways for our students to show that they are obtaining the information and learning in ways that fit them. So if you have a visual learner, having something like a slide deck with the text on there, or if you have someone who is very much a hands-on learner, creating an assignment or a way for them to show that they are taking in the information by, you know, creating something, making something with their hands. So that's a very short overview of UDL, but it's really about adapting to the students' learning styles. Wanting to make sure that we're creating and promoting an inclusive environment. And this goes across the board for all populations of students. When we're talking about recruiting, marketing, when we're talking about support services provided, when we're talking about the posters that we're putting on campus, making sure that the student body is fully represented, that they can physically and literally see themselves on campus, because there are images of individuals who they can relate to around campus, on marketing, on the website, and making sure that we're providing professional development, both for administrators, instructors, the student population as a whole, helping everyone learn and understand about various populations of individuals, and learning how to just be respectful humans, and educating ourselves as we continue through that process. And then teaching students strategies on self-advocacy, especially when we're talking about students with disabilities. If they have an IEP, depending on the populations of students you're serving, when they come from the secondary system into the post-secondary system, there is a level of independence that might be new for them, as well as their parents or their caregivers. And so really focusing on teaching self-advocacy strategies for them to advocate for those needs. And even those students who may not have a diagnosed whether we're talking about anxiety or ADHD. Maybe they don't have diagnosed ADHD, but knowing that they get easily distracted and might need a quiet space when it comes time for testing. Being able to teach them to advocate for themselves and speak up and say, hey, I don't know if this is possible, but I want to ask, and here's my reasons for asking. So economically disadvantaged students, this is the Perkins 5 definition, but economically disadvantaged students are those coming from low-income families or low-income adults. And so those who don't have that, that sustaining wage that they need, that's why they're coming to you, right? They're wanting to get that work-based learning. They're wanting to upskill. They're wanting to get that employment status to have that life-sustaining wage for them. And so when we're talking about economically disadvantaged students, and as you'll see as I move through this, a lot of the support strategies go across the board. And so even if I'm talking about a specific population, please know that these tend to be for student populations as a whole when it comes to supporting our learners. And so looking at counseling and advising services, having information readily available for support services within the community, again, that's something that will help all of our students. And I've heard a lot of programs talk about making a transition of when it comes to support strategies, when it comes to that extra scaffolding for students. A lot of times it was a mindset of having students opt in or having students have to sign up for or seek out these support services. And I've heard some programs that are now kind of flipping that and making it more of these are the support services and the things that are just when you sign on that dotted line and become a student and enrolled in our program, this is what's available to you. And it's reverting back to more of an opt-out. Like if you're not interested in those services, you can say no, thank you. But instead of having students go out and seek them, they're already right there being provided to them. Making sure, again, that we're working on the stigma, that we're avoiding stigma when it comes to all populations of students. And I think the biggest way to do that is to help educate our administrators, help educate our instructors, help educate our students. We know that a lot of students come from various backgrounds, and you may have individuals who haven't been exposed to different things in their life, and being able to provide that knowledge and that information to them. I think education is fantastic in any realm that we're talking about, being able to see from someone else's perspective and learn from them, and know that while you may not have gone through that personally, understanding that this is playing an impact on your peer and why is very beneficial to our students. And then providing, again, training to staff on trauma-informed care. We have several resources when it comes to trauma-informed care, and so I'll walk you through some of those and kind of help you see where those are highlighting that information, because trauma-informed care is one, again, whether it's economically disadvantaged students or not, trauma-informed care, especially after the pandemic, is a very useful tool for everyone to have and be aware of. And again, at any point, if you all have questions, comments, please feel free to jump off mute. I'd love to hear from you all. So students interested in non-traditional fields, this again is one that's specific to Perkins 5, but these are students that you all potentially are serving. And so when we say non-traditional, it's depending on who I'm talking to, there's a preconceived definition that pops up. So for example, I am a grad student. I am in my late 30s, we'll just put it at that. But I would technically be considered non-traditional on ISU campus as a grad student because I am older. I didn't come to grad school straight out of undergrad. I waited a few years. For adult education for folks, sometimes in the traditional campus space, adult education learners are considered non-traditional. But when we're talking about non-traditional fields, we're talking about individuals who are going into a career field that their particular gender or sex compromises less than 25% of the individuals employed within that field. So, for example, some of the examples on there are women in welding or law enforcement, women in IT. This is also men in early childhood education, nursing, or social work. And there's a link there to OCDE's 2020 non-traditional crosswalk, which shows you all of the non-traditional fields currently. I believe they are in the process of updating this, but that's the most current version that we have at this moment. And again, this is very specific language to Perkins, but these are students that you all are serving, whether you have women going into welding or whatever the case may be. And so when we're talking about supporting these individuals, really educating staff on their bias, maybe unconscious bias. And again, whether that's personal or institutional, if a lot of times it may be something they're not even aware of, if they're encouraging a student to go a particular path or a particular career field, sometimes we may unconsciously discourage students or not even mention a particular path to student because we have that unconscious bias of, well, they wouldn't be interested in that, or that's not a field for them. And so really working to educate staff on the various opportunities for these students, regardless of their gender. Presenting programs to students of all genders, right? Using inclusive language, again, making sure that when we're marketing these programs, when we're recruiting students, we are showing the student population and potential student population as a whole. Using commonly understood terminology. And so promoting IT to women and calling it a non-traditional field, probably not something that you want to refer to. That's very much a bureaucratic term when we say non-traditional fields, but just promoting it as an opportunity, as a career that maybe isn't something that they first thought of. I think a lot of times we speak bureaucrat language and we speak these terms that we have to for grant writing purposes or for the purpose of filling out reports, and it's language that we understand, but students and parents and caregivers have no idea what we're talking about. And so making sure that we are kind of staying away from the terminology that we use for the state and fiscal and government side of the house, and really calling it what it is for our students. Initiating hands-on experiences as early. Yeah, absolutely.
So I will just say that a lot of times when programs have reached out to me and asked questions about we need to do, or said they're going to do some recruiting material, they're going to update recruiting material. This is definitely one of the pieces that I'm like, what pictures are you using on your recruiting material? Whether it's social media, whether it's a flyer, whatever. And so this is one of those things that a lot of programs may hear from me on, because to your point, yes, it's non-traditional, and yes, that's part of my job on the bureaucratic side of the house. But it's also I have a daughter that's in a non-traditional field. She's in automotive. And so we've had a lot of conversations in our house about should she, what does that look like? The guys that she has to be in class with, some male instructors that she's had, talked about a couple different things. But there are, some of you in programs may hear from me when you say, hey, we updated our recruiting materials. Great, send me a copy of that. I'd love to see it. Here's what I'm doing. I'm looking to see when you updated it, or did you update the wording? Did you update the pictures? What all is included in this? And is there a way that we can help you? I can help you maybe reach a different population that you didn't even consider reaching because you changed the picture from a male to a female, from a group of white nurses to a group of mixed race nurses, any sort of, to Brittany's point, age, you know, college students are 18 to 24-year-olds. No, they're not a community. I mean, we know the average age at most community colleges is like 27 or 28. And I know not everyone on this grant is a community college, which also tells me you're probably also not serving 18 to 24-year-olds only. You've probably got some of those non-traditional older students that have come back that need help with different pieces. So there's a lot of space in this. So if any of you are out there and you're trying to figure out how to tackle this, or you want some advice on this, again, reach out to Brittany, reach out to me. We can help you explore, what do you have right now? What could you maybe alter, and not upend, not redo, not blow up and start from scratch, but little pieces that you could alter in there, and we can reach out. We can help you with that.
Yeah,
Okay,
absolutely.
I'm off my soapbox.
No, you're good. I love it. And we do, and I keep saying we, and when I say we, I'm talking about Amy Julian, who is the director of our center. I don't believe she was able to be on this call, but Amy and I have been working together for quite some time. And when it comes to underserved populations, special populations, targeted populations, whatever we want to call these students, right? Our students, our learners. This is something that we're very passionate about. And we have programs who have done a lot of these strategies and who have found success with them. So for example, mentoring programs. We have several programs that have mentoring programs in place, whether it's for a student population as a whole or a specific program, who have found success with it. And so we would be, excuse me, more than happy to not only assist you, but also connect you with other programs who aren't necessarily IBT programs, but have done some of these strategies that I'm sharing and have found success in it, and connect you with those to have the conversation of like, where did you start, right? Just as simple as, where did you start? You want to do a mentoring program. How did you even, like, what's step one for that? We would absolutely love to do that. And then when it comes to non-traditional fields, one of the big things is making sure, when it comes to whether it's changing rooms or equipment size, if you have, let's say we have a female going into welding, and with welding you have the safety gloves that you have to wear. If they're too big, if she can't get her hands on the tools properly because the gloves don't fit, that's going to cause frustration to a point to where she may drop out of the program. And the same for, a male going into nursing. If there are scrubs that are not available in his size, or if he has to pay more in order to get scrubs in his size, that is something that could be a frustrating enough point for our student population to just say, you know what, this program's not for me. This career is not for me. And this is not something I want to do when they leave. And so keeping those, what to us may seem as something small, but keeping that in mind when we are looking at our programs and the resources available to our students. Okay, so English learners, these are individuals whose their native language is not English. And so these are individuals who are learning English. You'll see on here, it also talks about secondary school students as well. This is a combination of both secondary and post-secondary, depending on the population of students you are supporting. I know we have some programs that are supporting those 16-year-olds as well. And again, I don't want to read the full definition to you because it is very Perkins specific, but you all work with English learners. And so how are we supporting English learners? Okay, I was gonna pause and say that it might look a little differently now, but we'll providing training for staff on current immigration laws. Again, I know that this particular topic at this particular time is sensitive, and I don't want to get too into the weeds of it, because at the end of the day, whether you're a community college, whether you're a CBO, We live in Illinois, and our role is to support our students, and our role is to support all of our students to the best of our ability. And as educators and as providers, we're going to continue to do that regardless of what the landscape looks like. And we are going to provide the best services that we are able to provide to our students. And so that does mean staying abreast of the different things that are taking place when it comes to immigration. That does mean potentially looking at various funding opportunities when it comes to supporting these students. Also looking at, civil rights laws that are currently in place. We want to make sure that we are doing the best that we can to support all of our students. And when we're talking about English language learners, based on your area, making sure that you're paying attention to the languages that are being spoken, that are popular within your area, and translating your documents, or having them available upon request. And making sure that whether it's enrollment documents, whether it's information about support services or additional resources, that if someone comes to you and asks for a translation in Spanish, or that's readily available to them so that they are able to see what services you offer, what programs you offer. And again, they then know, okay, this could potentially be a program for me because they're already thinking about me. This is something that they've already put into place. And going back to that education piece, when it comes to staff, instructors, students, weaving multiple languages into events and celebrations, acknowledging various celebrations based off of different cultural communities, and having that be more the norm on your campus, again, helps students feel seen, heard, helps them feel a sense of belonging, that, oh, my campus acknowledges, this various celebration that my family does. That has a huge impact on their sense of belonging and feeling a connection to that campus and to that program. And then again, making sure everyone is aware of which languages are spoken within your community so that those potential resources are available to them. And whether it's translating documents, whether it's having an individual who works on campus or works at that organization that also speaks that language as well, just making sure we're doing our best to provide every avenue we can to students when it comes to accessing our programs and our resources available. So this says homeless youth, but when we're talking about older individuals who are experiencing homeless, this is all the same. So when we say homeless, it's individuals who lack a fixed, regular, and adequate nighttime residence. And I find that a lot of times we have conversations about quote unquote couch surfing, or students who are actively experiencing homelessness, but may not be aware that by definition, right, that McKinney-Vento Act, they are currently homeless. And it's being able to have that conversation and navigating that with them and educating our students of, hey, I know that you're crashing at a friend's house, or I know you're living with your aunt right now, but a week from now, 2 weeks from now, what does your living situation look like? Because by definition, they are experiencing homelessness, which then unlocks some additional supports and services within your institution for them to take advantage of. And so, like I said, when it comes to the secondary side of the house, as well as the post-secondary side of the house, there is now what are called house liaisons. So the secondary side has always had them. This is something relatively new for the post-secondary side. And our center is actually working with ICCB on what we call the House Liaison Center, which I can dump in the chat as well as a resource for you all. But making sure that students, families, staff are aware of what's available under the McKinney-Vento Act, are aware of how the McKinney-Vento Act defines homelessness. If you have an intake form for your students, and if this is a question that is asked, and however you have chosen to term it to make it less stigmatizing for a student to answer honestly to, make sure that that question is also being asked throughout the semester, throughout the academic year, because something that I'm sure you all are aware of is student situations change. And while a student may come into your program that is not currently experiencing homelessness, 6 months later, their situation may have changed. Maybe they got laid off and they lost their job and they're no longer able to pay rent. Who knows what the case may be, but making sure that we are continuing that conversation throughout the time that we have with that student, because life happens. And what may have been taking place on day one of them entering your program, a year and a half into it, might not be the same case. And as with all of these populations, providing professional development and training to staff is so important, because students come face to face with various individuals at your program, at your institution, and making sure that everyone is aware of the barriers that these students may be facing and how to offer a kind, supportive listening ear, and also to know who to send the individual to. If someone comes and is saying, hey, I'm having trouble paying my rent this month, do they know who to ask for? Do they know who can best support this student in their time of need? And then offering flexibility, whether that's through scheduling programs, whether that's through when if you have a food bank on campus or at your organization, the hours of operation, making sure that we're being as flexible as we're able to for our students and their schedules and situations as well. So foster care involved youth are individuals who are either currently in foster care or have aged out of the foster care system. And so when we're talking about Illinois, individuals in foster care age out at the age of 21. And even if individuals have aged out of foster care, that has impacted their life, depending on how long they've been in the foster care system, the experiences that they've had. That is still something that very much impacts their choices, their learning abilities, their learning style, how they trust individuals. And so when we're talking about foster care involved youth, that's really what we're talking about here. And so supporting foster care youth, we want to make sure, again, developing positive working relationships with child welfare agency staff, especially if our students, again, because you don't age out until 21, so that falls in line with some of the age of students that we are providing services for, building those relationships with them. Also to help potentially those individuals, those child welfare agencies could be a great resource for recruiting students and informing students about your programs, or potential students about your programs, and letting them know, like, hey, I know that there's this program over here that I think would be a great fit for you. I know the contact, let me connect you. Looking at workshops and seminars to help give them the skills they need to be successful. So whether that's employability skills, whether that's your life skills, which a lot of programs already have those as well. And so making sure that we're just continuing those, and counseling and academic advising services. Again, this is something that should be provided to all of our students across the board, having those continual check-ins with our students to see how things are going, because again, their situations change, and things that may not have been a barrier or a concern can become a concern down the road. So I'm going to move through the rest of these rather quickly, because I do want to provide time for you all to have comments and questions. Military connected youth, Depending on the age is a difficult one. Also, when we're talking about military connected youth, so this is specific to Perkins 5, but also just students who are in active military or previously were in the military in some form or fashion. Those are individuals who are going to need additional supports and services as well. But for this, it's talking about individuals who have a parent that is an active member of the armed forces. But I know a lot of you also serve students who are active members of the armed forces. And so keeping up to date on current policies and procedures when we're talking about transitioning those students, or when we're supporting the students who are currently on active duty, right? Their scheduling can vary, and being flexible when it comes to acknowledging the fact that they are active duty and do have other obligations that they have to fulfill. And so making sure that we are aware of that we are providing counseling and academic support services for them that they have. I know there's a community college that has a very active military student population on campus, and they have a veteran center on their campus. And again, that pulls in that mentoring piece of being able to have students who understand what you're going through, who have been there, who know that it can be frustrating, who know, especially when we're talking about active military, they have a very different, they've been trained to have a very different demeanor about them. And so being able to have a group of students who understand where they're coming from and who can be that support system for them. And then parenting teens, single parents, and pregnant mothers. I think that's pretty self-explanatory. We're talking about parents. We're talking about students with children, whether they are single parents with children, whether it's a pregnant student. These are individuals who, when you have children, that again is another priority, another obligation, another concern that can be a factor in that has an impact on your academic journey. So making sure that we are staying abreast to Title IX and the rights that parents and pregnant students have when it comes to their academic career. Ensuring reasonable accommodations both during and after pregnancy, being aware of local childcare options. Childcare is expensive. I say that as someone who has 2 kids. And so what are the financial supports available to these students, and having them at the ready for individuals who ask. And back to the mentoring piece, setting up student support groups, being able to allow these students a space to communicate with other individuals and their peers who know what they're going through and understand the frustrations of navigating parenthood along with being in an academic program. And then out of workforce are those individuals who are looking to either upskill or who have been unemployed for a significant amount of time and now are coming back into the workforce environment to find employment. And so this goes back to mentors, support groups, looking at stress management classes. These individuals also may be parents, and so offering parenting classes, community agencies that can help support them. Again, when we're talking about underserved populations, it really is a community approach. We don't expect a community college, a CBO, an institution to handle it all in-house. It really is looking at the resources available at your organization and then what's in your community that can help support these students as well. And so I do want to walk through really quickly, which I may have to do a reshare here, so bear with me. I want to walk through really quickly some of the additional resources that we have available, because some of you may not have ever seen our website. Some of you may not be familiar with what we have. Okay. I don't know if you can see all the little Zoom boxes on here, so I'm going to move these out of the way really quickly. All right, so this is our ICSPS website. So this is our main website. It's just a hub for all of our resources. And you'll see here we have accessible practices. So ADA is the autism grant I was talking about. And so this will take you to all of our resources that we have available when it comes to supporting students with autism. This is really focusing on transitioning individuals with autism from the secondary system to either the post-secondary system or the workforce. We currently do monthly webinars. Next fiscal year, we're not going to do as many webinars, but still a fantastic resource. And as you can see, we divide it up by community. So if you're an employer, if you're a family, if you're a student or young adult, if you're working within the post-secondary system, we have various resources for you to utilize, and a lot of trainings that we have done when it comes to supporting students on the spectrum. And then we have, this is titled Empowering CTE, but again, this is also very pertinent to you all. We have homeless support, so that house liaison center that I was talking about, that's what this is. If it'll let me click on it, there we go. So we have a plethora of webinars that we have done on supporting students experiencing homelessness. We've also done a lot of how to braid funding when it comes to supporting students experiencing homelessness. We have various resources. So this is a house liaison handbook that was created in 2024 on various ways that institutions can help support their students experiencing homelessness, prevention and housing resources, various financial supports for students, training and advocacy as well. So again, I want to show you all of where this stuff is, and it's taking everything in me not to dive in and be like, let me show you this handbook and let me show you this. We don't have that much time, but these are all available to you regardless of what program your student is going in, regardless of where your funding is coming from. All of these resources are available to you. And so let me go back here, because also on this website is we have a tab for Universal Design for Learning. So that'll go through some webinars, and really if you want to take a deep dive into what is Universal Design for Learning, what does that look like, how do I implement it, this will help walk you through that. We also have a lot of trainings and information on trauma-informed care. So these are all resources, linked resources as well. We did a series with IPOI that goes through culture and trauma, that supporting trauma-informed education in post-secondary systems is a wonderful series that we did with Shanna Shipman. And then the other resource, and all of these are linked on the slide deck as well. Ignore this, I'm not sure what's happening here, but this is our Illinois Workforce Academy website. So this is more on the workforce side of the house. So you'll see it's called Supporting Targeted Populations, but it talks about, you know, supporting LGBTQIA+ populations, an intro to social identity, bias, power dynamics. We have so many resources and trainings, reentry, that we have done that I think would be of benefit to you, substance use recovery, navigating criminal record release. All of these are very relevant, especially when we're talking about working with our students, transitioning them into that workforce environment. This is where you'll want to go. And if you're navigating through these and you have questions, or you're like, hey, Brittany, these are really great, but I want something a little bit more customized, or I really like this resource, is it possible to take it to the next level? Here's what I'm thinking. please feel free to share that information with me. I will put my email in the chat here momentarily. I'm going to pull my slide deck up again really quick. I have a Mac, so
And
when
Brittany, are you gonna email me that slide deck and then I'll share it out, or do you just want to
yeah,
send it out to the listserv?
I will email the slide deck. We're also recording this, so I will share
Okay.
this recording as well.
Okay.
But and
I will share it out with the listserv. That's fine.
I know we don't have too much time, and I know I threw a lot of information at you rather quickly, but I do want to hear from you all as far as any questions about the information that I shared or the resources that I went over. And then what are your programs currently doing to support underserved students? And that includes those student populations that I did not discuss. What are you finding works best? Where are you finding that you need to add in additional supports and services, or maybe rethink how you're supporting certain students? I'd really love to hear from you all. And while I'm waiting to kind of hear your thoughts and comments, I will pop my email address in the chat. So that way, if you have questions after the fact, you will be able to get a hold of me.
Rennie, I see your hand is up.
Yeah, I just wanted to share something that we do. We have a designated transition coordinator, which is the best start because we have a person who dedicates her time to supporting our students overall. And in a way, the majority of our students fall into one of these special categories when we really look at our students. But there's one little thing that I wanted to mention that we do every year. So we do have a needs assessment. We do run surveys in the beginning of the year, but what we do toward the middle, we always check in with our students. Has anything changed? And this is something comparatively new that we started doing in the recent years because we used to take the information in the beginning of the year and run with that, assuming that, oh, we know everything about the student. But in reality, we started doing those check-ins at some point during the semester, at the midpoint, because things change and students may need additional support services. And Suzanne Klauke is our point person for that. And she does those check-ins with all of the classes in our program. That is all that I wanted to share, that those regular check-ins matter for us.
Good. And they probably, as you said, and even Brittany mentioned, a lot of times we ask these questions up front and we just say, oh, we're good. We asked those questions. We told the students these are some options. But, and we are as guilty as our students are. Oh, that doesn't apply to me right now. I don't have to listen to this. Well, then 3 months in, you find yourself out of a job. You find yourself missing housing. You find your car broken down, your child care, you name it, something happens. And you're like, oh, somebody mentioned something. Who was that? And where do I? So again, to Brittany's point about that opting out versus opting in, putting that information out there, doing a check-in with them. How are things? Where are you? What's going on? Yes, it takes time, but it does also, it also helps the student know that they're not on their own. So good for you, Rennie. Thank you for sharing that.
Absolutely.
Anybody else have, Brittany?
Yeah, no, I was just gonna say, and our students are human, and I know I am the type that sometimes my pride gets in the way of asking for help, and that can be the case for our students as well. Or oh, I've got it. I'll figure it out. I don't need to mention it to anybody, or I don't need to take it to anybody. But if you have someone who asks you those questions and who approaches you and says, hey, just checking in, seeing how things are going. How is, if it's an individual with a child, how's childcare looking for you right now? Just give me an update. And opening up those lines of communication, that then that decreases the stigma, right? And makes it easier for a student to be open and honest and say, you know what, actually, I just got laid off 2 weeks ago and I'm struggling. And here's what's going on. And being able to have that conversation. I do want to mention, Chris put in the chat that I think it's important to discuss here. He said, as a former male early childhood educator, we are very much erased in the public view of the profession, and we have our own specific issues that need to be supported in the field. And Chris, thank you so much for sharing that, because I think you summed it up perfectly when we're talking about non-traditional fields specifically, or even when we're talking about underserved student populations. That term, erased in the public view, I think is so important to hear and to remember, because a lot of times that can be how our students feel. If they don't see themselves in that program, in that environment, in that institution, then they don't feel that they belong there, and they're not going to put themselves in a position to feel that type of discomfort and that type of unbelonging. And so making sure that we're doing everything that we can, right? Our institutions, our programs are not perfect, but making sure that we're doing everything that we can to make sure that our student population and potential learners that we may get feel welcome, feel as though they are supported, feel as though we are hearing their concerns and meeting their concerns and doing something about it, I think is extremely important when we're talking about serving students in general, regardless of what population they may belong to.
So Brittany, it looks like we're right at time. So I just want to throw out there, next month is an operational meeting. It's the third Tuesday at 10 o'clock. It's July, if I'm doing the math in my head correct, the 16th, but don't hold me to that, because that's the math in my head. I'm not actually looking at a calendar. But that meeting, we will be talking about details specific around the grant. We'll have some time for different, for everybody to break out into their breakout rooms with their objective. So everybody who's working on objective 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 can talk to each other and get ideas and brainstorm some things. But I just wanted to throw that out there, that keep in mind July, thank you, Brittany, 15th is the meeting, that is operational meeting, and that everybody needs to plan to attend. So, thank you very much, Brittany, for sharing this information. As she said, when she's got the recording ready to go and the PowerPoint, she will send those to me. I will get them shared out with the listserv, and we will go from there.
All right, thank you all. And yeah, don't be
Thank you,
afraid
everyone.
to email me.
Thank you.
Questions or need anything. Thank you.